In today's video, we're going to make a beat using only stock Ableton instruments. As music producers, obviously it's really easy to overlook the stock instruments. Now Ableton gets a bad rep for its stock sounds, and whilst it might not have a big bank of presets like FL Studio does with plugins like Flex, I think the included synths in Ableton can be really powerful if you just know a little bit of sound design. Now whilst I'm not going to go fully into sound design and synthesis today, I will put a few links to a few videos that I've used in the past that have helped me figure out how to use the synths. For the most part here, we're just going to use stock sounds like the library, maybe tweak them a little bit, maybe create a couple of sounds here and there. Before we get into it though, if you're new here, my name's SK, I make beats, and if you find any of the content useful in this video, you can hit the subscribe button just down below. For this one, I'm just going to set my tempo to around about 150 BPM. Now the version I use of Ableton is Ableton Live Suite. So if you use an intro or standard, there might be a couple of instruments here you don't have. So I'm just going to start by using this basic brush bells from Operator. We quantize them. I'm just going to switch a couple of these up. Now, if you don't know scales, you can just click scale here, set it into D minor. I'm just going to stretch this out for 8 bars. I'm just going to copy this over to the second 4 bars. I'm just going to switch this up for the second one. If I want to edit the sound of the bells, there's some effects here, but you can also click this button here. This just expands the synth out. As you can see, the synth is made of 3 layers here. First layer is this. Second layer adds this in. Third layer adds this in. Now I think I just want to bring the level of this third layer down a little bit. Have a look at the reverb. Now with the reverb, as it's routed to here, as you can see, as you move this, it changes the dry wet. Next, I just want to add a bit of delay, so let's see how the delay in here sounds. Take the feedback down on it a little bit. Just adds a small bit of motion to it. The next I want to layer that with maybe some strings or a pad. See if I can find a pad that I like. I think I'm going to use this transcending pluck pad. First though, before I add the pad, I'm just going to make sure I cut any low end out of the bells. I think if we turn this into a 16 for the second section, we'll just take them up an octave. On this pad here, we'll just start with a root note. Maybe add the root note in an octave higher at the end. And then on this one, we'll do the same. Then bring it down to here. And then on the second half, where the bells go up, take these an octave down. And maybe take these longer notes down as well. There's almost like contrary motion from the pad to the bells. When one goes up, the other one comes down. I'm just going to take out any low end from the bottom. Go up the top as well. Bring the volume of those down a little bit. Let's wash the sound into the background a bit more with some reverb. Now there's 2 reverbs that I really like in Ableton. One's the Convolution and the Convolution Pro, and the other is this hybrid reverb. I'm just going to pull that in. I'm going to bring the decay down. The next thing I want to add is some movement. Now, normally I would do this for something like Shaperbox from Cable Guys, or maybe Kickstart. But there's quite an easy way to do this in Ableton with stock sounds. So on the audio effects, if you come to modulators, there's envelope, follower, LFO, and shaper. Now these can be used for any parameter in Ableton. For this one, I'm just going to use the shaper. This is the shape of it. So we can move this along, or we can switch it to be the opposite way around. Now the easiest thing to pair this with is a utility. Now if I click map, and I click the gain, as you can see, it'll be moving the gain. Now, obviously, we don't want it going up and down constantly quite like that. We don't want it to go over 0. If we set this one here to 50, it'll now only go up and down from here. You can then set the rate. I think for this one, I might put it on 1/2. Now, at the moment, it's ducking down really fast after this, so I'm just going to put a point in here. Maybe just have the end of it here duck off. Change the depth so it doesn't do it quite as much. Think of the depth kind of like as the mix button. The reason why I like to set the shaper to the gain rather than the main volume control, because now I can still independently control the volume, and that'll only move it from wherever the max volume is set to on the actual fader itself. Now if we want to do the same but with panning, we can actually use this auto pan, quite like this suitcase auto pan setting. This takes it quite wide. And the other one that I quite like is this subtle stereo. It's a bit more, well, subtle obviously. So now that I've got that layer in, I think I just want to put some piano chords underneath it. Let's go ahead and type in piano, this grand piano here. Let's go ahead and add some chords. By the way, if you click on this scale, and the notes don't show up, just hit K on your keyboard. I'm just going to start by making a basic triad. Maybe take it down to just a bar. make them feel a little bit more human just by randomizing them. And I'm just going to turn the grid off, and just using the arrow keys, I'm just going to move some of them a little bit, as you can hear. They just make it kind of strum a little bit. Slight changes in variation makes all the difference sometimes. Add some reverb to these. For this one, I'm going to add some convolution reverb, I think. Bring the decay down a bit. As you can see, there's quite a lot of different settings in here. That's just the real places. On top of that, there's all these different options. I'm going to go to ambience and small rooms. I'm just going to leave it on this back room setting here. I'm just going to take the dry wet up a little bit more, as I just want it to be a background layer, not too prominent. Just going to copy this grand piano over, take the reverb off this layer. I'm just going to add this as some bass notes. Let's drop this down. We can have this on a B and an A. I think maybe just on this last 8 bar here, we'll add a bit more variation actually. I think with the pad dropping down lower, I'm just going to beef up the piano on the second half here. I'm just going to copy it up to the next octave up as well. So just thicken the sound out a little bit so it doesn't get lost. Next, I'm just going to add some drums, and I might come back and add some melodic elements later. But to add drums, the easiest way I find is the drum rack. Now, if you're a beginner and you don't know how to use the drum rack, I'll show you how to drag your own samples in if you have some. So for instance, on this one, I'll just come to my splice packs, just find a snare. I think I'm just going to pull this one in. So all you have to do is drag it in, pop it on the note that you'd like. That corresponds with the notes on your keyboards. Next, we're going to put in a hi-hat. So what I'm going to do here is just start with a simple pattern. And I'm just going to add in some other hits as ghost notes. Next, we're just going to find a second hi-hat, use it to accent some of the notes and just fill the extra gaps in. Next, we're going to put a kick down. I'll show you how to design your own. It's really easy in Ableton. I'm just going to right-click and insert a MIDI track. I'm going to bring in drum synth kick. That tells you what frequency you're currently at here by the pitch. So this is currently in an F0. Now I know we're working in D minor, so I'm just going to drop this down to the root note. As we can see here, D0. So let's add a bit more drive. If we turn it all the way up, I think I want it around here somewhere. Add a bit of attack if you want to. Obviously, if you're adding too much attack, you're getting rid of the transient at the start. I'm just going to add a very small amount. Now this bottom one here is overtone. If I turn that all the way up, you can just hear those higher kind of harmonics. I don't want too many of those. I think there, this adds a click. For this tutorial, I'm just going to leave the click off. Now your decay, I'll make it last longer. This is your amplitude envelope. If we turn that up, if we turn it down, I'm just going to leave it where it was originally. Obviously, this is your volume control, which is quite self-explanatory. Now with the drum synth, it doesn't make a difference what note I play it on, whether I hit a note here on the keyboard at the bottom or here at the top. It all plays the same. What I'm going to do is just drop a note on here. I'm going to turn this into an audio form. I'm just going to right-click, hit freeze track, right-click again and hit flatten. This will turn it into its audio form. I'm just going to add some effects, shape the sound how I want it to sound. First thing I'm going to do is add an EQ and take out anything below about 20. I'm just going to mold this a little bit. As you can hear in the higher end here, that's where a lot of your punch in a kick is. And obviously down here is where your sub frequencies are. So an easy way of finding out where is a good place to boost for the track you're making. As we know, we're in D minor. We could go back to the drum synth. If we wanted to set this to a different D, we'll just go up with it. For instance, if we go to D1, we can see it's at 73.1. A nice place to boost here might be around 73. Now if we just solo this band, we take the gain on that up. I just give it a little bit more kind of sub punch. I'm a big fan of just adding a little small amount around here somewhere. This helps it cut through the mix a bit better. The next thing I'm going to do is add some of this drum bus. So obviously this is drive. I don't want to add too much of it. And here you can add boom. I don't want too much of that either. But it is a really nice effect. Crunch will make the transient kind of hit a bit harder. I want a small amount of that. So we know from here, 73. So I'm just going to set this frequency to 73 on the boom. So you can turn the transients up or down here. This works like a transient shaper. Gives more of that attack at the start. I'm just going to add a small amount of that. Next thing I'm going to add is some saturator. Another stock plugin that I'm quite a big fan of. This will add saturation and kind of higher frequency harmonics, which helps it cut through the mix better as well. Another thing you can do in here is soft clip. It just kind of rounds off the edges when it gets too loud and adds some nice saturation. For the purpose of this though, I'm just going to leave it here. Now if I wanted to go about soft clipping it, instead of using the saturator, what I'd normally use is the glue compressor, then soft clip on, then the makeup up. As you can hear, this can make your kick super loud and punchy. Obviously, that's way too much for the track we're working on. Bring this threshold down, set this to a slow attack, a fast release. I think that'll probably do it for the sound design of this kick, so I'm just going to right-click and freeze it. I'm going to right-click and hit flatten again. From there, I can just drag this sample into the drum rack, and then we can go about adding our kick in. I'm just going to bring this kick down just a little bit. I'm just going to bring my snare back up a little bit as well. Right, so now that we've got the kick down, I'm going to go ahead and add some more percussion, and then we'll make an 808 from scratch. I'm just going to start with a rim shot. And this one here. I'm just going to use that to kind of accent the snares a bit and fill them in. It's here and here. Bring the velocity of these up a little bit. Next, I'm just going to add this shaker noise. Next, I'm just going to add this wood block. Just going to add a crash cymbal like I always do, just here at the start of the pattern. I'm just going to keep the volume on this one quite low though. The next, we're going to make an 808. These are really easy to make in Ableton. You can do them in pretty much any of the included synths. However, for the purpose of this, I'm going to use DS Kick. I think this is a really easy tool for making short 808s. I'm just going to pitch this to C. Now, the reason why I'm pitching it to C instead of D, so that when we convert it to audio and load it into a simpler, it'll correspond to the correct keys on the keyboard. Let's just solo this track. Turn this drive up. Got a little bit of this overtone on. As we know, we don't want the transient from it because we've got the kick to punch through. I'm just going to turn this attack up a little bit. Going to turn the decay up. Maybe about there. I'm just going to turn the envelope up a little bit. Quite happy with the way that sounds just as a starting point. I'm just going to go ahead and put a note in. I'm going to freeze it, flatten it. I'm going to add a small amount of fade to the start here. Because I know my kick will be able to punch through then. From there, I'm just going to add some of the drum bus. Maybe add some of this boom. Maybe add a little bit of crunch. Turn the drive up a little bit. Bring the transients down slightly. Next, I'm just going to add some of the saturator. I'm just going to put this bit warmer preset on. I'm just going to swap these around the other way. The order in which you put your plugins can make a difference to the overall sound in the end. Next, I'm just going to add some compression onto this. I'm going to set the attack to be in about midway. Just compressing the transient from the start because we know we have the kick to come through. Just going to right click, freeze and flatten that again. Going to add a little bit of fade to it again. Right click and hit freeze and flatten. From there, I can insert a MIDI track, bring in a simpler, bring this into the simpler itself. So when I'm making the pattern for the 808s, I like to follow the pattern of the kick. Usually I'll actually put the 808s in first and have the kick follow the 808s, but as we've already put the kick in. On beats like this, I like to keep the pattern really simple, mostly hitting the root note and just a few in for variation. It's going to shape the sound of the 808 just a little bit more. Take out anything below 20 Hertz. Next, I just want to add a counter melody, so I'm just going to use this basic nylon concerto guitar. I quantize these, blot out a few of the velocities, EQ out any low end. Filter off some of the top as well on this. Add some reverb, just add some auto pan to these as well. I'm going to go with the suitcase auto pan. So these are probably just going to play in the chorus. Now that I've got that counter melody in, I think my beat sounds full enough. So all I'm going to do now is structure it out and then show you the final beat. Before I do that though, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can always hit that down below as well.